Look at this face. 81 years of living, and only now do I understand what I've done. My name is Richard. I have 2 children, both millionaires, both miserable, and that is my legacy. That is what I leave behind. I didn't abuse them. I didn't abandon them. I gave them everything, the best schools, the best opportunities, the best advice I knew how to give. But the advice was poison, and I fed it to them every single day for 20 years. I taught my kids to chase money, not happiness. And now, at 81 years old, watching them live the exact same hollow life I lived, I finally understand the magnitude of my mistake. If you have children, if you're raising the next generation right now, please listen to an old man who got it all wrong before you pass the same curse to your kids. I grew up poor, not just poor, desperately poor. My father worked 3 jobs, and we still ate government cheese. I wore shoes with holes in them until I was 15. I shared a bedroom with my 2 brothers in a house that barely had heat, and I promised myself, I swore to God that my children would never know that life. They would never feel the shame of being a poor kid. They would never worry about money, never. So when I had my son David in 1965, I had a mission, a purpose. I was going to give him what I never had: security, wealth, success. I got my real estate license when David was 2. I worked 7 days a week. I missed dinner. I missed bedtime. But I was building something, building an empire. By the time David was 10, I owned 12 rental properties. By the time he was 15, I was a millionaire. I had done it, broken the cycle of poverty. My son would never struggle like I did. But somewhere in that climb, somewhere between property 6 and property 12, I stopped being his father and became his instructor, his trainer, his coach in the religion of wealth. Every dinner I made it home for, and there weren't many, I preached the gospel. I remember David was 7 years old. He came home from school excited about an art project. He had painted a picture of our family. It was beautiful. In that clumsy, innocent way children create. He was so proud. I looked at it for maybe 5 seconds. Then I said, "That's nice, son. But you know, art doesn't pay the bills. You need to focus on subjects that matter. Math, business, things that make money." I watched the light dim in his eyes, but I told myself I was teaching him reality, preparing him for the real world. Being a good father means being honest, right? When he was 12, he wanted to join the school band, wanted to play trumpet. I said no. "Waste of time," I told him. "Focus on your grades. Get into a good business school. That's what matters." My daughter Michelle, born 3 years after David, she wanted to be a veterinarian. She loved animals, spent all her time reading books about wildlife, rescuing injured birds, dreaming about Africa. I sat her down when she was 14. I showed her the salary data. "Veterinarians don't make good money, Michelle. Now, a surgeon makes real money. Or business. You're smart. You could run a company someday. Make real money." I thought I was helping, guiding, protecting them from the financial struggles I knew so well. But what I was really doing was taking their dreams and running them through a calculator. And if the number wasn't big enough, I threw the dream away. By the time David was in high school, He knew exactly what success looked like because I told him every single day. Success was a six-figure salary. Success was a corner office. Success was a house in the right neighborhood, a car that made people look twice, a title that impressed at dinner parties. I never asked him what made him happy. I asked him what he wanted to be, as if what you do is the same as who you are. He got straight A's, not because he loved learning, but because grades were the currency that bought the future I demanded. He joined the right clubs, not the ones he enjoyed, but the ones that looked good on college applications. He got into Wharton, business school, top of his class. I was so proud, so proud. I threw him a graduation party and gave a speech about how he was going to change the world, meaning make a lot of money. Michelle followed the same path, pre-med, Harvard, then medical school, became a cardiologist, high-paying specialty, exactly what I told her to do. At her white coat ceremony, she looked tired, already tired, and she wasn't even 30 yet. But she was successful. They both were. By every measure I had taught them, they had won. David called me at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in 2019. He was 54 years old, VP at a major investment firm, making over $800,000 a year, living in Connecticut in a house worth $3 million. He was crying. Dad, I can't do this anymore. I can't. I wake up every morning and I don't know why. I have everything and I have nothing. He had just gotten divorced. Second marriage. His kids barely spoke to him, the same way he barely spoke to me for most of his adult life. He was on blood pressure medication, sleeping pills, anti-anxiety medication. He had chest pains earlier that week. Thought it was a heart attack. It was a panic attack. At 54 years old, my son's body was shutting down from stress. And through his tears, he said something that broke me. He said, Dad, you told me this would make me happy. You promised if I worked hard, made money, achieved success, I'd be happy. You lied. I didn't lie. I believed it. I genuinely believed that money equals happiness because, for me, going from poverty to wealth felt like liberation, like breathing after drowning. But what I didn't understand, what I couldn't see, was that I had confused survival with purpose. I had confused escaping pain with finding joy, and I had taught my son to do the same. 2 weeks after that phone call, I visited Michelle. We had lunch, expensive restaurant. She was late, came rushing in wearing scrubs, apologizing, checking her phone every 3 minutes. I asked her how she was. Really asked. For the first time in maybe decades. She looked at me with these exhausted eyes and said, I'm fine, Dad. Busy. Always busy. Then she paused, took a breath, and said, Dad, do you remember when I wanted to be a vet, work with animals? I nodded. I think about that sometimes. I think about the version of me that got to do that. And I wonder, would she be happier? I asked if she was unhappy. She gave me this sad smile and said, I don't know, Dad. I don't think I know what happiness feels like anymore. I know what achievement feels like, what success feels like. But happiness? I forgot. She makes $450,000 a year. She's divorced, no kids, never had time for them, works 70 hours a week, lives alone in a beautiful condo that she's never home enough to enjoy. And sitting across from her, I realized I was looking in a mirror. She was me, 30 years younger. Same exhaustion, same emptiness, same confusion about why success doesn't feel like winning. I had successfully taught my daughter to be exactly like me, and it was the worst thing I could have done. David has 2 kids from his first marriage, my grandchildren. Emily is 24, James is 21. Emily is in law school, Harvard Law, following the script, working herself to death for grades, for internships, for the right firms. I watch her Instagram sometimes, pictures of her at her desk at 2 a.m., captions about the grind and hustle culture. She's 24 and already has stress headaches, already drinks too much coffee, already looks tired. James dropped out of college 2 years ago, went to Colorado, works at a ski resort, makes $15 an hour, lives in a shared apartment, snowboards every day. David is ashamed of him, calls him a failure, refuses to talk to him most of the time. But I visited James last year. I wanted to see this failure for myself. And you know what I found? A happy kid. Genuinely happy. He wakes up excited about the day. He has friends who actually like him, not network connections. He's broke, but he's free. He said to me, "Grandpa, I know Dad thinks I'm wasting my life, but I've seen what his life looks like, and I don't want that. I don't want to be rich and miserable." Out of all of them, the grandson who rejected everything I taught, he's the only one who figured it out. I did the math once, sat down with a calculator and figured it out. I made approximately $8 million in my lifetime. After taxes, expenses, everything, I accumulated about $4.2 million in wealth. It's sitting in accounts right now. Investments, real estate, safe, secure. Now let me do a different calculation. I worked an average of 65 hours a week for 45 years. That's 152,100 hours of work. If I had worked 40 hours a week instead, I would have had 58,500 extra hours. That's 2,437 extra days. That's 6.6 extra years. What could I have done with 6.6 extra years? I could have been at every one of David's baseball games. I could have taught Michelle to ride a bike. I could have taken my wife on actual vacations, not business trips she tagged along on. I could have been present, actually present. Would I have made $8 million? No. Maybe I'd have made $3 million, maybe $2 million, but would my son call me crying at 2 a.m. because his life feels meaningless? Would my daughter have forgotten what happiness feels like? Would I have a relationship with my grandchildren? I traded 6.6 years of life for money that doesn't love me back. And I taught my children to make the same trade. I'm redoing my will right now. At 81, you think about these things. I have $4.2 million to leave behind. David will get half. Michelle will get half. They'll each inherit about $2 million after taxes. You know what they said when I told them? David said, "Thanks, Dad. I'll probably just reinvest it." Michelle said, "That's generous, Dad. I'll put it toward retirement." Neither of them sounded happy. Neither of them sounded grateful. They sounded indifferent. Because money to them is just a number. They already have enough numbers. What they don't have is purpose, joy, peace. I'm leaving them millions, But what I took from them, what I stole, was the ability to know what they actually want, who they actually are, what actually makes them happy. I taught them to measure everything in dollars, and now they're rich and empty. That's my legacy. That's what survives me. If I could go back, if I could sit down with 7-year-old David and 14-year-old Michelle, here's what I would say instead. I wouldn't say art doesn't pay the bills. I'd say art feeds your soul, and your soul matters more than any bill. I wouldn't say focus on subjects that make money. I'd say focus on subjects that make you curious, that make you excited to wake up, because curiosity is the compass. Money is just shoes. You need shoes, but you don't build your life around them. I wouldn't ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'd ask, what makes you feel alive? What could you do for hours and forget to check the clock? I wouldn't show them salary charts. I'd show them people who love their work. Artists, teachers, park rangers, musicians, people who might not be rich, but who are wealthy in ways that matter. I would teach them that success isn't a number in a bank account. Success is waking up glad you're alive. Success is work that feels like play. Success is relationships that fill you up instead of drain you. I would teach them that money is a tool, not a destination. You need enough to survive, to be comfortable, to be secure. But beyond that, money doesn't change anything. It doesn't make you happy. It doesn't give you meaning. It doesn't love you back. I would teach them to ask different questions. Not how much does it pay, but will this make me happy? Not what looks impressive, but what feels right. Not what will others think, but what do I actually want? I called David after that 2 a.m. conversation, called him back a few days later when he had calmed down. I tried to apologize. I said, "Son, I'm sorry. I pushed you toward a life that wasn't yours. I taught you the wrong things." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Dad, I don't blame you. You thought you were helping. You thought you were protecting me. But here's the thing. Forgiveness doesn't undo damage. He forgives me, but he's still miserable. He still wakes up in a life he doesn't want. He still can't figure out how to be happy because I never taught him how." Michelle, I haven't apologized to Michelle yet. I don't know how. What do I say? Sorry I convinced you to give up your dreams for a paycheck? Sorry I made you choose money over meaning? She's 51 years old. If she quit tomorrow and became a vet, she'd be starting over at 51. Is that even possible? Or did I rob her of too much time already? The worst part, the absolute worst part, is watching it continue. Emily, my granddaughter, is doing exactly what her father did, what I did, grinding, hustling, chasing prestige and money, ignoring every signal from her body and soul that says, slow down, because she thinks the finish line is just ahead. She's 24, the same age I was when I started this whole mess. And I can see the next 60 years mapped out for her already. The promotions, the burnout, the failed relationships, the therapy, the medication, the 2 a.m. breakdowns. And I can't stop it. I created this. I set this machine in motion, and now it's running on its own. James, my dropout grandson, he's the only one who escaped. And he's treated like a failure because of it, rejected by his father, looked down on by his sister, the one who figured it out. is considered the mistake. If you have kids, if you're raising children right now, please listen to me. Don't teach them to chase money. Teach them to chase purpose. Don't ask them what they want to be. Ask them what makes them feel alive. Don't push them toward high-paying careers. Push them toward meaningful work. Don't measure their worth by their salary. Measure their worth by their joy. Money is important. I'm not saying it's not. You need enough to be safe, to be comfortable, to take care of your family. But beyond that, money is just paper. Numbers in an account. It doesn't hug you. It doesn't make you laugh. It doesn't make your life meaningful. I made millions. I gave my kids millions, and we are all empty. You know what? I would trade it all for one afternoon where David is genuinely happy, where Michelle wakes up excited about her day, where my grandchildren know me as something other than the rich old man who's disappointed in them. I'd trade every penny for a family that actually likes being together, not out of obligation, not out of politeness, but because we're connected by something deeper than money. For 40 years, I asked my kids one question over and over: how much will that pay? Art class? How much will that pay? Music lessons? How much will that pay? Philosophy degree? How much will that pay? Dream career? How much will that pay? Everything filtered through that single question. I wish I had asked a different question. Will this make you happy? That's it. That's the only question that matters. David wanted to be a history teacher. Did you know that? When he was 16, he told me he loved history, wanted to teach high school kids, help them understand the world. I laughed. I actually laughed. I said, teachers make $35,000 a year. You're smarter than that. What if I had said, will teaching make you happy? And if he said yes, what if I had said, then do it, and I'll support you? He'd be making $70,000 a year now instead of $800,000. But you know what else he'd be? He'd be alive, actually alive, not this hollow version going through the motions. I'm 81 years old. I'm dying. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. The doctors are clear about that. And when I go, I'm leaving behind millions of dollars and 2 children who don't know how to be happy. That's my legacy. Please, please, don't do what I did. Teach your children that money is a tool, not a god. Teach them that happiness is the goal, not wealth. Teach them to find work they love, not just work that pays. Teach them that their worth has nothing to do with their net worth. Teach them to ask, will this fulfill me, not will this impress people? Because I taught my kids to climb the ladder of success. And they made it to the top, and there's nothing there, just air, and the realization that they climbed the wrong ladder. Don't let your kids climb the wrong ladder. Show them the one that leads to joy, to meaning, to a life they actually want to live, even if it doesn't make them rich. Because I promise you, rich and miserable is not better than comfortable and happy. I learned that too late. Please don't let your kids learn it too late too. Thank you for listening to an old man's confession. Subscribe to this channel if you want to learn from the mistakes of someone who got it wrong, so you can get it right. Share this with any parent who's pushing their kids toward money instead of meaning. And please tell me in the comments, what are you teaching your children about success? Is it what I taught mine or something better? I'll be reading because at 81, learning from my mistakes is all I have left. God bless you and teach them well.